Hello and welcome to Realm's Edge Gaming. In this episode I wanted to talk to you about the possibility of the Vampire Coast coming to the Age of Sigmar. Definitely something that I'd be looking forward to and hoping is on the way, but we're going to have a look at some of the evidence which I think possibly points towards, if not the Vampire Coast and Luthor Harkon, but at least a kind of Soulblight nautical faction which could potentially be joining us rather soon. So, this all started back in June 2005. Can't believe that that's 15 years ago with White Dwarf issue number 306. And in the magazine, it spoke about the zombie pirates of the Vampire Coast, and it introduced the rules for Luthor Harkon and for how we could field an actual Vampire Coast army. Now, just talking back to the world that was before the Age of Sigmar, there were 9 Mortarchs of Nagash, and here they are all listed. And what I kind of want to draw your attention to is one of the old Mortarchs was actually Luthor Harkon, which was the Mortarch of the Abyss. Now, one of the other Mortarchs that you will be probably very familiar with is Manfred von Karstein, and he was actually responsible for Luthor Harkon's death back in the world that was. Now, as we've transitioned over to the Age of Sigmar, so far we've had 5 of the Mortarchs revealed to us. We've got Manfred, Neferata, Harkon, Catacross, and Lady Alinda. Now, Manfred, Harkon, and Neferata actually all transitioned across from the world that was, and Nagash brought them with him and still kept them on as Mortarchs. Now, I just think it would be really, really interesting if, thinking back to the backstory of Manfred killing Luthor, if Nagash decided to bring back Luthor Harkon, either to prove a point to Manfred or to just see how he would fit in with the next kind of development of the Soul Wars story, because I think Luthor Harkon would be a brilliant addition along with his army to the Legions of Nagash. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I think Luthor Harkon would be a superb addition to the storyline that we've had so far. So, another kind of nautical Soulblight character who came up in the Age of Sigmar along with Luthor Harkon is Varkos Varactyr. And this was in 2017 during the Age of Sigmar campaign, which was called Firestorm. And there was a couple of articles on the Warhammer community website which spoke about kind of vampire pirates and also called them the Wraithfleet. So who knows, maybe if rather than the Vampire Coast we might end up with the Wraithfleet or something similar. Now, to kind of add further interest to the nautical pirate themed idea, Creative Assembly then released an expansion for Total War, Warhammer 2, which was called Curse of the Vampire Coast. This was back in November 2018, and as you can see here, features none other than the Mortarch of the Abyss, Luthor Harkon. And in the back you can see that wonderful model there, the Necrofex Colossus, and how amazing that would be if that actually got an Age of Sigmar release, because I think they could do such a good job with it. So why do I think Luthor Harkon would be interesting, or any of the pirate-themed nautical Soulblights, Mortarchs for Nagash during the current storyline that we've got? Well, to be honest, it's due to kind of one key reason, and that's to do with the Skaven and their Gnorholes. Now, during the Soul Wars, the Skaven opened up a Gnorhole right under the Kafdar Sea, and in doing so, they actually ended up draining it, and unbeknownst to the Skaven and Nagash, uncovered the Idoneth Deepkin, who were right under Nagash's nose in Shaiish. Now, Nagash obviously didn't take kindly to the theft of his souls as he saw it, that the Idoneth Deepkin were keeping for themselves to kind of help with their race. And in the story that we read in the Malign Portents, which was called As Above, So Below, Nagash actually sees the Idoneth Deepkin and sends down into the water thousands of dead walkers as retribution for the perceived soul theft. And it kind of, when I was reading the story, really reminded me of that scene in Pirates of the Caribbean. And there's just a picture from the film where the zombies go underneath the water. And I just thought how cool and thematic that would be if you could actually have that in the Age of Sigmar and have, the kind of models that looked like that. I just think it would be wonderful. So moving on to some of the rumour engines, which I think lean towards maybe the Vampire Coast, Wraithfleet, nautical themed Soulblight army we could potentially be seeing. Now, I'll be honest with you, this first one here did feel like a bit of a reach, but I've decided to include it anyway. And you can see next to it, we've got the picture of the crab. I thought maybe we've got the, the rotting Prometheans and the Leviathans in the Vampire Coast video game. Possibly looks like a crab eye. You can see it's kind of sunken there. Who knows? I think this one's probably more reasonable, where you've got the crab claw. You can see those kind of offshoots there, and you can see it there on that rendering of one of the models in the game, and you can also see the barnacles too. So maybe we could see one of the rotting Leviathans or Prometheans in Age of Sigmar. The next one is the Morn Gull. We had this rumour engine here. Now, this could also be pointing towards Malarions, Shadow Elves, but I decided to go with the Morn Gull. You can see it's kind of similar to this one. The nails on the finger are also reminiscent of it too. Forge World have already made this model, but who knows? Maybe Games Workshop will revisit it and decide to kind of update the model too. In this image, we've got just a kind of rendering of Luthor, Harkon, and Captain Drekla, who was his captain in the kind of storyline in the game. And Drekla's kind of nickname was the Silver Hook of Sartosa. You can see a kind of hook image there, maybe. But I think more realistically, we can see here there is a very ornate grip on Harkon's sword, and the two rumour engines there definitely seem to be ornate too. You can see these kind of barbed parts of the sword, and this seems to have it also. So who knows, maybe that could be a Luthor Harkon sword. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, who knows? I guess only time will tell. Our next one, we've got a kind of halberd or axe. Now in the game, we've got the Depth Guard, and their axes there you can see by Creative Assembly. I think more realistically, we've got Captain Noctilus, who was the commander of the Dreadfleet. You can see his halberd there. It's got that kind of pointy part at the bottom, reminiscent of that, and the long spiked part at the top. Possibly similar. I'll be honest, the next three rumour engines, I wasn't too sure. Maybe potential, but I've decided to include them anyway. Maybe the prow of a ship moored to a rock in that first image. The second one looks vampiric with the long nails, some kind of wear and tear to the sword, and finally like a flintlock pistol, which the zombie pirates are known for having. So who knows? Moving on to the Hammerhal Herald, we've got Lake Lethis, and we've got the kind of Kraken image at the bottom there. Again, the Dreadfleet, you can see that was Count Noctilus's Dreadfleet. You can see an image there. Some of the comments on the Facebook page were talking about vampirates. And again, you can see that model there, which was released with the Dreadfleet. Count Noctilus, who knows? This one was also interesting, I thought, about Shaishan bone meal. And it was this point that really grabbed my attention. It was ethically sourced and imported from Mort Haven. Now, on the Malign Portent's website, it says about land of Mort Haven has been ransacked. It once allowed fleets to dock in its coastal ports and traders to fill their bellies on the simple but wholesome bread from its windmills and farms. And it was that idea of the coast again. Was it hinting towards vampirates or kind of corsairs with the Soulblight? Who knows? And then lastly, we've got, to do with the kind of more naval aspects of it. We've got Anvil Guard, which is a highly contested and valuable stretch of ocean filled with precious resources and long-lost treasures. So again, another nod towards naval, coastal, and once more, people's comments were talking about vampire pirates. There definitely seems to be some interest in this as a faction if ever it was to materialise. And then finally, the most recent one, October the 14th. Now, this one wasn't really nautical, but it definitely was to do with Soulblight. Maybe it's pointing that something is on the way. We've got a couple of preview shows coming up. I've definitely got my fingers crossed, and I'd like to know, do you as well? Are you looking forward to maybe seeing a nautical vampire faction or the return of Luthor Harkon? Why would it be cool for you? Well, for me, it would be really interesting to have a ranged kind of death faction. Now, Ossiarch Bone Reapers do have the Mortek Crawler, but Vampire Coast have got the guns and the kind of flintlock pistols. I thought that would be interesting. It would be interesting to see where the kind of storyline go with Idnath Deepkin, if Nagash does turn his attention to them. It would be interesting to delve deeper into Manfred's character, if Luthor Harkon was to return, and see how those Mortarks would interact with one another. I can't imagine that Luthor would be too impressed with Manfred having killed him previously in the world that was. Maybe Nagash would bring him back to prove a point to Manfred that he isn't as in control as he maybe would like to think. I'd love to see the models that Creative Assembly did brought to life on the tabletop by Games Workshop. The Necrofex Colossus is fabulous, and I really do recommend you check it out if you've not seen it. I think it'd be a really interesting twist on a death-themed faction, and if they did go down the Luthor kind of storyline, to have a death magic-resistant faction. Luthor Harkon in the world that was had his kind of connection to the winds of magic severed when he tried to steal some treasures from the Lizardmen. We know them as the Seraphon now. But it would be really cool to kind of customize your army and either have that magic-themed kind of twist on it, or go down the magic resistance side. But what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them. Please drop a comment below and tell me what you think, and we'll kind of get some ideas going about what we might see in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.